Blog Talk Radio.
This is Patty Holstran, and this is KWOD Radio. Yes, we're here again. It's Thursday, which means we got over our Wednesday already. And the weekend's right around the corner. Top of the hour, 6 o'clock. And we have a lot to talk about. Just so everyone knows, the phone number is 714-242-5145. And I believe we have Raymond online. But first, I'm going to introduce him. But I also want to remind you that this weekend is comic book. You have comic book day tomorrow. So you go in and you can find your comic books, your favorite comic book store, and they have some free comic books for you. That'll be all day tomorrow. Oh, no, sorry, not tomorrow. It's Friday. Oh, I apologize. It's going to be Saturday. So just 2 more days of free comic books. Yay! Raymond Swanland is a freelance illustrator who began his career working on the Oddworld Inhabitants series of video games and has created artwork for Magic: The Gathering cards, World of Warcraft, Aliens vs. Predator, ImagineFX, Disturbed, many sci-fi fantasy novel covers, and more. He won the Spectrum Award in 2004 and the David Gemmel, I sure hope I'm saying it right, Legend Award in 2012. His recent work includes a series of covers for Games Workshop's Warhammer 40,000 and a marketing workshop for DC Comics. Gee, I don't know anybody at DC Comics. Animated movie, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. I never heard of Batman, so we'll have to talk about him. Raymond Swanland will be at our artist guest of honor right here in Arizona. His first at LepreCon 39. And, of course, that's next week already. Raymond is also up for this year's Spectrum Award again, or so I'm told by a friend of his, John Shinheady. Are you there, Raymond?
Hey there. Yes, I'm here, Patty. Thanks for having me.
That's okay. Hopefully you heard the introduction.
I did. Thank you. It sounds a little strange when I hear somebody talking about me as if I'm not in the room, but I guess technically I'm not. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
That's no problem. I'm sure that there's some other things that we could probably add. But, you know, we have that new Spectrum Award news, so I had to get that in there.
Yeah, I heard that. I know that I got a couple of pieces in that they notified me about, but I did listen to your interview with John Shinheady, and apparently the piece I did with him got in there, which I didn't even know about. So I know that I know the publishers sometimes put art that's been done for them up and submit it to Spectrum, and the artists don't even know about it. So that's a double surprise for me. So but it's definitely always an honor. And ever since I got into Spectrum for the first time, God knows, not sure how many years ago now. Probably at least 8 or 9 years ago, perhaps. But ever since I got in, I've submitted every year and at least gotten one piece in each year. So it's definitely a tradition that I have so much respect for them that I hope I can keep being up to their bar and keep getting in each year. So I'll try my best.
Yeah, you know, it's always good to get some awards behind you. It does help to get the jobs, don't you think?
Well, I mean, that's actually how I got my first real freelance jobs was through having my pieces in Spectrum, and that was enough for art directors to see the work I had, and I was fortunate enough that they were basically contacting me after that, and so I definitely give a lot of credit to Spectrum for giving me the exposure that otherwise I'm not sure how exactly I would have achieved. So
Wow.
It's a great opportunity, and I always tell any aspiring artists who ask me quite often, how do they break in? And you just got to get it out there, and somebody will see you. And if your art speaks to them, they'll get in touch with you. So they're always looking for new art.
There you go, and that's of course some very good advice for any artist as well as author. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure that we're going to be going over quite a bit of that this next weekend when you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to know, okay, is I want people to get to know who you are, because if I'm not mistaken, this is your first time being a guest of honor.
Yes. I mean, I have gone and accepted awards and given little talks, and I actually frequently go to conventions for the card game Magic the Gathering. So
yeah.
I do go and meet the fans a lot, but this is definitely my first time as a guest of honor, and to have that kind of attention on me. So, so yes, it is actually pretty new, and so I suppose I'll be somewhat of a new face for some of the fans, I suppose.
And for those who may not listen to the interview with John Hetty from Wizards of the Coast, how I happened upon Raymond was that I had looked at specifically, I was looking for a younger generation to be able to tap into and be able to, get them reintroduced to LepreCon, because we're 39 years old, so which is pretty old for a convention.
Yeah.
So, we wanted to try to, get some new blood in, and I said, well, we really need to really get some of the bigger companies to help us to, get some notoriety out here. So I looked towards, Wizards of the Coast to help that, and I saw John, and he seemed very, he's very influential, tries to help kids, really mentors people, and I thought this is terrific, so I contacted him, and he said, I would love to be your artist guest of honor, except while I do doodle, I don't, I'm not considered a national artist. I'm an art director.
Right.
And so I appreciated his candor and said, well, that's something different we haven't done. We haven't really done an art industry guest of honor before. So I said,
interesting.
yeah, so why not do it? You've got the backing of Wizards of the Coast, and so, why not, go ahead and let John come in and give his 2 cents. And then I started looking. I said, John, who would you guess? And he goes, well, I don't want to show any favoritism. I said, okay. Okay. And he says, well, if you look towards the Hugo winners, and I said, everybody tells me that, and honestly, I've already had all of them. Because LepreCon is considered mostly an art for the art industry. So sci-fi, fantasy, horror, in the art, but with a bent towards the art. So we've had, Todd Lockwood and, oh geez, I'm going blank on me. John, man.
Gene Cola? I'm not going to guess.
John.
There's too many Johns out there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So anyway, we've had all the Johns, okay? And and I was looking at specifically some things that was on the website and saw your work, and I thought, wow, you have such depth of character, but you also have backgrounds that just totally create a whole new world that, honestly, I must look at almost anything of yours and can come up with an idea for a story, which is really great for an author. So I said, well, I really think that I would love to have Raymond come in, and I asked John about it, John Hetty, and he says, I've never personally met him yet, but he is a really gifted artist, and I think that he would love to come out, and he lives in California. I said, hey, we're right in Arizona. We're right next door. It's cheaper.
Not too far. Certainly is.
So I said, yeah, let's see if I can get, and I said, do you happen to know how to get a hold of him? He goes, sure. So that's how it happened.
Oh, wow. That's funny because when I received the invitation, part of me in the back of my mind was asking, well, I wonder how many people they asked who already, like, oh, it was too far to go, they couldn't do it, they couldn't make it, and then I was, a little ways down the list, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, that's not too far away, I'll give that a go. But it's interesting to hear that it came together in such a sort of organic way, where you just kind of you went on to the Wizards website, and then you just kind of gravitated towards something in particular. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something that spoke to me. Something that said, it spoke to me in multiple ways as an author, also in ways of what I like to see. And your monsters, your werewolves are just cool. So I happen to love werewolves. So.
Oh, that's funny. So you probably saw the green piece then, where the werewolf that had the sort of white fire drifting off of it or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's the one. I really do like that piece as well. It's one of my favorite pieces of the last couple of years. So I'm glad you were able to see that one. But it's very flattering that of all the great art that you saw, I'm sure you saw on the Wizard site, that you gravitated towards mine. So I really appreciate that.
No, that's okay. It's okay. And I said, well, you haven't been here yet, and so that's the other thing. It says, number one, you're young. I don't know how old you are, but you're definitely. I would say I'm gonna venture to say about 28.
Okay.
Are you older than that?
I actually am. I'm actually 35. But if I'm clean shaven and you meet me, you'll probably still think I'm 28. So that's fine. It's all good.
Okay. So,
but there's no doubt
really,
though that.
35 is still pretty young.
Oh yeah, I keep telling myself that.
Well, you have to.
Exactly.
Every year from now on, you have to tell yourself that. I just turned 50, so it's like, okay, I really have to tell myself now that it's only 50.
It's only 50. It's like you got a whole half your life ahead of you. It's plenty of time.
Yeah.
But
a friend who wants to live until he's 100, so he said, I'm only halfway there.
There's no doubt that I would consider myself pretty much part of the younger or the current generation of illustrators in science fiction and fantasy right now. Although, I did get my start doing art for a living when I was 19, so I've actually been in the industry for quite a while, compared to a lot of people who necessarily go through art school and such, and then kind of work for a while to build up a portfolio and get things. And I kind of dove right into just doing art day in, day out as a job when I was 19. So I do kind of feel like I've been around for a little while, but stylistically and just the medium that I work in and everything, I think is pretty well a reflection of more or less the current generation. Because I think about artists who are probably only maybe 10 years older than me, and sometimes I see them as being a generation ahead of me because I was looking at their art when I was coming up and as a formative artist and everything, and they seem older than me now, and they are older than me, but even though in a relative sense we're closer in age and closer towards being colleagues in the industry, I still consider them to be head and shoulders above and ahead of me because I was inspired by them. So I don't know. It's probably creeping up on me that there will be artists that are younger than me that are looking at my art and being inspired in a similar way. If I'd be so flattered to be that for them, I would be. It'll probably start giving me a better sense of how long I have been working and how far I might have come in the last 15 or 20 years. So.
Well, exactly. You have to have some kind of experience in order to get to where you are now. I got the name, by the way. It's John Picacho.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
He's already been here. I sit here digging through because it just drives me nuts when I can't remember somebody. But you got the year behind you, and you started young, so Did you doodle as a kid? Is that how you found out you liked art?
Oh, definitely, and probably that sort of cliched artist story of where I can't even remember when I started because I probably started so young, and I still remember the stories from my grandmother telling me, oh yeah, drawing that dinosaur with the volcano in the background, and she kept it up on her refrigerator for 10 years, and I would still be visiting her and be like, where'd that come from? Who drew that? She's like, you did 10 years ago. I was like, wow. So there's no doubt that I'm just one of those stories where I've been doing it ever since I was a really little kid, and I was the only brother amongst sisters, so I had a lot of time in my own room to myself that I tend to spend just exploring my imagination, reading books, looking at a lot of illustrated books as well, and then occasionally drawing on the walls, but mostly just drawing on paper and trying to keep it not too crazy, but I definitely was just exploring drawing from a very young age. So although I have spent a lot of time working at getting better and better, I'm no savant or genius or anything like that. I just work really hard at it. But I guess at a young age it did come fairly naturally to me. So
you were definitely gifted in that. I mean, it's your creative, your gift.
I would say
creatively,
just enough to keep me motivated to keep going at it. So and I would say that it developed very slowly. I wouldn't say I made huge leaps and bounds at any particular time, but I just stuck to it for, like I said, all the way back to as far as I can remember. So yeah, it's one of those kind of stories, I suppose.
So where do you pull your inspiration from now?
I would say that I've certainly been, alive long enough and traveled enough that I definitely draw on a lot of memories of places that I've been to, and I sort of keep a list of things that I've seen in my mind, of sort of cultural styles and things like that I'd like to explore. So that's part of where my inspiration comes from now. Mm-hmm. But I still stay on top of what's going on in the world of arts, and mostly the world of illustration. But also I'm a huge movie lover, and I find that to be a pretty amazing art form.
Yeah.
Certainly a collective art form, not really a personal art form, but a collective one, but an art form nonetheless. So I find a lot of inspiration in storytelling. And,
I know what you mean. Kind of like the inspiration you might have gotten from the werewolves, because some of these designers of these costumes and these monsters for television and for movies have been just phenomenal, and the detail and depth of that monster.
That's right. The industry and the sort of savvy nature of the audience demands that it become more detailed and more realistic and more spectacular with each film. So the market itself drives the art to be just more more intense, and it just adds up very quickly. And so I think that the film industry definitely pushes a lot of the art retroactively. I'm sure filmmakers are inspired by illustrations they saw on the covers of the books they were reading, and then went to make their films, and now the illustrators are being influenced by that as well. So I think it's circular. So when asking me where do I get my inspiration from now, it's so hard because it really is from so many different sources. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that having like the largest variety to work from is definitely what keeps me excited to continue to do illustration day in and day out.
Wow. And I know I'm looking forward to seeing some of your pieces in person. So because I have been looking at them online, for the months that we've been pulling this all together. So I'm looking forward to seeing some things in person, because I think that it's a new dimension when you can see it in person compared to seeing it on a screen. The colors obviously are going to be different because you're RGB, and said you got your true colors on your real whatever it is that you're whatever you're going to.
True. Yeah, it is important to remember that that I did actually create pretty much all the art that I would have sent to you and that would be in the show. It's all created in the computer, so so in a way that is its sort of natural medium, and maybe even its natural place to be viewed in some ways. Although most of it is meant to be ultimately printed out and on the cover of a book or on a card or on what have you, and so it's not necessarily untrue to see it on a computer screen, but it's also but it's a very different experience to look at it on a computer screen as to see it hanging on a wall in a gallery or something like that.
And of course that's how we do our show. We've got flats. We hang this stuff up on or on tables for other prints that we can sell to your fans of all this particular work. So that's what LepreCon's all about. And that's the other reason I said I want somebody who hasn't been here yet, and introduce you to a whole new to people who love that kind of work. That way they find somebody else new they can fall in love with. So that's what we do here.
Cool.
So we have models of your art with people in them. I saw that your people. Do you use models when you, or do you just kind of study people and kind of go with what you have in your head?
I've never been part of the school of using models for my artwork. I think if you see my earlier work, that would probably be pretty more clear that I was still learning lighting and things like that. So as opposed to necessarily like taking a photograph of a model that's dressed up fairly well like the character I'm going for, and then sort of using that as a direct reference, I've always been far more interested in inventing it purely in the art itself. Because the way I tend to start a piece of art is really with gesture, where if I'm drawing a character, and the character oftentimes in action, but not always, but oftentimes it is in action, then I use a lot of very loose brush strokes to suggest the pose and the motion of the character, and then I would start to sort of sculpt it and make the anatomy more accurate and sculpt it to fit that gesture. And I suppose I could take pictures of models, but I actually really like the experience of feeling like I'm understanding the three-dimensionality of it and the physics of the way light works. It just makes me feel like it makes me a stronger artist for myself to try so hard to really imagine that scene that I'm painting from many different angles, and I've just chosen one angle to actually do it from, as opposed to choosing a photograph of a model I've taken and to just focus on that alone. So it's just a different it's certainly just a different approach, and but I like the fact that it's not something you can just take a picture of. It's something that has been invented purely in the process of making the art. So it mostly comes from probably the way I grew up, or basically the way I taught myself to be an artist, where I never did even think about really taking a picture of a person or anything that I was drawing. It was always something that I just wanted to invent as I was going. So that's my process.
Well, I think that takes a lot stronger creative ability to think of it in your head and from different angles. I mean, that's That's borderline brilliant, you know.
Well, it's really just a lot of work, but I enjoy it. I mean, when I'm starting a piece, I actually do. I would say that I front load the process of doing the artwork in the sense that I do a lot of full color sketches of the composition itself, you know, and I try it from multiple different angles until I find the one that I like, because in a way I'm often viewing the scene and the character as more or less a movie in my head. And so I'm thinking of it almost like moving, moving the movie camera around till I find the angle that is, you know, the most dramatic or expresses what I'm trying to get across. And you know, I do have to, you know, draw it a number of times before I go, okay, yes, that feels more like what I'm seeing in my head, because oftentimes what I'm seeing in my head is in motion. So I might see the motion that's happening over and over in my head, but trying to just create a still frame of that, it's like you think, like when you've drawn it, it seems like you've drawn exactly what's in your head, but now that it's static and it's not moving, you find that it's not quite capturing the motion I'm seeing in my head. But that's oftentimes why in my pieces also, there's always a sense of motion. Something is always moving, and it almost feels like you've caught something, almost like it's motion blurred, you know, running past the camera. But yeah, I mean that's really kind of where I come from that angle.
Yeah, that would explain you know, your style.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you really think about it, you know, you are creating kind of like an author does. They got the scene in their head, and they're trying to get it on paper. They're trying to write the emotion and the description of what they're seeing in their head, and sometimes it doesn't quite come out right.
Yeah, that's right. Because once you've committed to telling it one way, suddenly it doesn't have all of the sort of three-dimensionality that you might have wanted it to. So you have to try again until you capture captured it either in words or images. You know, something close to how kind of big and abstract it can be in your head. So that's that's one of the biggest challenges of being creative at all. So,
and you're probably right. You're probably right. That is a creative. That is a creative. You know, the creative. What we have to do, the steps we have to do in order to bring out our creativity that's in our head. But that's
we're always
perfect.
whittling it down. Yeah, we're always whittling it down in order to actually present it to another person, because you can't just download all of those ideas that are in your head. You have to decide which ones are the most pure so that you can pass those along. And that's hard because it can almost be like static. Like there's so many ideas, it can almost become like white noise in the brain. But that is, you know, that's the challenge of not just being an artist, but also of being, as an illustrator, of being creative on demand, as I always call it. It's something where, you know, sometimes your head is not as clear as it could be, and that's the challenge is to still find a fairly pure image in there somewhere. And you know, so that to me is actually one of the biggest challenges of being a freelance illustrator. Is just to, you don't know that you're always going to be perfectly on your A game.
No.
So how do you try and tap into that as often as possible, or even when you're not feeling at your best, how do you still bring your best out? And that's something that's hard to explain, but perhaps.
No, I understand totally. I have the same issue. As I design covers for books. And I have people who say, well, you know, they give me their image and, you know, give me the idea, and I start searching, and it's not, and then it comes together, it's not quite right. And I'm not happy with it. It's because you can't turn on your your A game, as you put it, every time. And every day it's not an A game. But for some reason, one day, you know, after this last cover I did, she gave me some ideas, and I've gave her, you know, 4 ideas, and she really liked one, but her publisher didn't like it. And so we went back to the drawing board And she said, well, why don't we try something like, this? And I said, okay. So I looked again, found something, and I was much happier with the second round and won specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody was happy.
Yeah, oftentimes it can also be a bit of a curse for me that I do so many, as I said, I do many full color sketches right at the outset of designing it, and I basically send all the best of those color sketches to an art director or client for them to choose which suits them best. And it can often be that I have a favorite, but that isn't their favorite. So there's, but I will go for what they respond to, and I try not to send any sketches in any batch where I really wouldn't want to do that as a cover, because I could always get stuck with doing that as cover. So
yeah.
So I try and give it.
Not happy with it.
I have to try and send as big a variety, I try to send as big a variety as I can, so they have as many options. But I also have to serve myself to the extent that I don't want to be stuck with a composition that I inherently don't feel is either the best for this, for that particular project, or even that I don't really like it that much at all. It's okay, but and that does happen sometimes though, where I have to take a sketch that wasn't really my favorite and figure out a way to make it my favorite in a way, to really get rid of the things that are not working for me, but still keep true to what the original sketch was trying to do. So yeah,
exactly. And I'm not an illustrator. I'm a designer. In other words, I take pieces and make it into something else, which I could never. I've never really been a freehand drawer, which is something I would love to do, but that's just not my bag of creativity. So that's okay.
Well, don't let my story about drawing ever since I was a little kid deter you. You don't need to draw for 35 years in order to be able to express yourself through art. That's definitely not true. But I think that you could pick it up at any time. But but you will have to work through it.
Oh yeah. Well, either you can draw a straight line or you can't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
So, we all have our certain links or certain things that we're creative in. And so I'm able to actually take something that you did and be able to finish it. And that's where I work hand in hand with artists to do that. So that's what I do. So it's a good team-oriented type of thing, and it works well. So
absolutely.
Say, hey, if you move this character a little, 3/8 to the left, I can have more room for the cover title. They don't think about that sometimes.
That's true, but I also do love graphic design. I don't get a chance to do it very often, but I find it, or I would also say like things like logo design, because it's very different than telling a story. It really is about a form language that just in its kind of purity just looks pleasing to the eye, but also communicates an idea. But I think in a very clean and a pretty pure way, compared to a big elaborate illustration where there's many subtle details that you could kind of read into, while something like graphic design needs to hit you immediately, and you need to and be able to respond to it immediately as well. So I think I love graphic design.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and since we're bringing this up, your cover for the program book for the LepreCon, you have this knack for, you have so many layers and so many nuances to the world building that you have on there. And I was sitting there looking at it and said, well, that's not really what I had in mind for Warriors of the Rainbow, but you know what? Then I looked at it and said, oh my gosh, there's a story there.
Well, that actually is where, when you gave me the concept of Warriors of the Rainbow, I did my research to see what exactly that was all about. And as it being I'm actually not entirely sure when it was created. There's a suggestion that it's a very old mythology, but it's also, I guess, the title of Warriors of the Rainbow was something that was more latched onto in like the 70s and things like that. Is that correct?
Well, it was our original idea was that it was from Hopis.
Yes, that's right.
It's Arizona.
Right.
And
so it's an ancient Native American mythology and prophecy, right?
Which is why that's exactly. I'm looking at your stuff, going. Oh my gosh, this Warriors of the Rainbow is a different type of warrior. We're talking about animals here, which is exactly what the Hopi idea was. Not just animals, but everyone. Every creed. We're all different, but yet we're the same. And
that's right. And that was and so instead of actually using a big rainbow in my piece, which I did consider doing, I ended up going with simply really what I would call a symbolic animal that in itself represents a sort of and it's not a warrior or anything like that. It's actually a walking city or a walking palace. And to me, that was really just an idea of sort of an animal spirit or a spirit of nature that is actually thriving and growing, and that could be the future of civilization. So it's up to, and as you mentioned, I did try and put so many layers of sort of symbolism and meaning and just details to read that it would allow people to find their own story in it as well. And that's what gets me really excited about doing a piece like that. We're doing all this talking, and nobody who's probably listening to this is able to see it at the moment, but hopefully they'll get a chance to look at it and remember what it's all about.
Well, as soon as I want them to see it because it's going to print. Actually, it's already at the printer, so we're hoping that it's definitely going. I want them to see it when they get it. Obviously, you guys are to tell LepreCon people. I know they're sitting there listening. You got to come to LepreCon and get this program book, obviously, so that way you have this unique piece that Raymond created for us, and then sit there and enjoy it and think about all the different stories that can come out of it. I plan on writing the story that came to my head when I was looking at your piece, and it's something I've never really written before, but it's definitely fantasy. So.
Well, I hope you do. I think it would be amazing if it was able to, the painting itself was able to have offspring of some kind, which are basically by people being inspired by it and making something themselves. So yeah, I hope you get a chance to do that.
Well, I started it because it was inspired by the piece and said, wow, this is something I don't think I've ever gotten into, but it's definitely a cool idea, and I love animals, and I do have animals in my fantasy writing, so it's not too far of a stretch. It is a world of animals, and I think that this is something that we are getting more into when it comes to science fiction. I think I talked to Jack McDevitt yesterday about how we're losing some of the ideas of science fiction because we've already been there, done that.
Sure.
And so. Now we're getting, even he had the thought and idea that, we need to look at what is our work going to be like 8,000 years from now. and then go backwards and figure out, what went wrong or what went right. So
that's exactly right. I think that it's true. I think that science fiction and fantasy, for that matter, have been quite grounded in the last, mostly the last 20 years. I think there's been a lot of sort of going inwards with stories, as opposed to going out into the far reaches of the future or the far reaches of the universe, for that matter. And it's been a lot more stories that are more central to our experience right now. And so I agree that I would love to see stories that as they call it, explore more hard science fiction, where they really are exploring like almost philosophical ideas and really challenging the reader or the viewer, however you put it. So.
Yeah, that's you know, if you really think about it, and we talk about this sometimes, is that if you look at the television shows now, hardly any of them are. I don't think any of them right now are actually in space.
Yeah, not very many. I mean, there's some of them out there.
That they're in a alternate universe, or they're on Earth. You know,
in a different time
millenniums
or
now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
way in the future, but they're not in space anymore.
It's definitely true that like I definitely grew up as a teenager with the Star Trek: The Next Generation series on TV, and I thought that I didn't realize it at the time. I only realize it now when I look back. But the all the writing wasn't so. It wasn't perhaps as edgy as dramas tend to be these days, but they really did explore what I would consider hard science fiction of really pushing the limits and making you think about the ideas of perhaps building a giant sphere around a sun, or living an entire lifetime in a matter of a couple hours, but you're just doing it in your head. That's something. Yeah, it's something that I just don't see that much anymore, and I do miss that. I do miss it for sure.
Yeah, and you think, well, here we're all saying, hey, this is what I want to read. Why aren't we getting it? And so that's what we'll be talking about next weekend with Jatma Devin, and he is what I consider one of the last real science fiction writers, because we're losing him.
That's right. Yeah, it's sad every time I hear about one of my writing heroes, leaving us, and it's like there's certainly there's always a new guard that's coming up, but I think it's just a reflection of where our culture is at right now, that we are very concerned about ourselves and the here and now at the moment, and as opposed to necessarily kind of using our imaginations and really our our motivation to look towards the future and to look pretty far into the future potentially, and not just see an apocalypse, which tends to be that's pretty much the standard right now. It's always going to be an apocalypse of some kind, and although it's always possible, but it'd be nice to see, without perhaps being too idealistic, to see a future where it's not always just the aftermath of a complete devastation. So, but it does show. It does show where our society is focusing right now, and that reveals a lot. So.
Yeah, you're right, and of course it's not just writing, but also artwork has to reflect the direction that the society is going. And so I know that you did Alien, and I know you did Predator, which of course is my son's 19. It's one of his favorite. Alien versus Predator.
Yeah.
And so he'll be able to actually meet you too this weekend. So he said, because there's always the question, which one would win,
Of course.
So
I was asking the same thing when I was 15 years old. So those characters have been around for a long time, and those two in particular were some of were big inspiration for me to even, like, I would have drawings from 20 years ago that I was doing of both of those characters, and models that I was making, and it was kind of strange to get the opportunity to officially do artwork for those properties, that they're still around and that they still interest people just as much as they ever have, and they still interest me. So it's great to keep exploring that kind of stuff, and it's nostalgic while at the same time it's very present as well. So those Aliens and Predator, those in particular are definitely interesting and close to my heart in a weird way.
Which is why I brought him up. And you know that you did work on there, and so I was wondering whether or not that was influence. So you played right into that.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
job. So your backgrounds tell a story of all their own. How do you create the depth of that world that you wind up ending up with?
I mean, I think it's an outgrowth of what I was talking about before about when I approach the art, I'm seeing it as a story. And but beyond that, of course, I mean, most of the art that I'm doing is for clients, for books, for album cover art, for comic books, sometimes for films, and I personally really, video games as well. I definitely always like to be part of a storytelling process. So because that's where the atmosphere, what's going on in the background, I want to know as much information as I can going into a piece in order to give it that depth and to not just feel like it's it has the bare minimum of elements that it needs in order to be a complete piece, a finished piece of artwork. I honestly feel like I do my best work and enjoy my work the best when I get, for a book cover, when I get an entire manuscript to read ahead of time, because then I can choose, what do I feel like the themes of the story are, and I could just choose a particular scene, which is oftentimes what art directors supply to the illustrators themselves. It's just simply here's a chapter, or even just here's a couple paragraphs of description of what we'd like you to paint, and that can be challenging. It can be some people find it freeing, but I think it's challenging because there's not that much detail, and I can certainly fill it in for myself, but I really do want it to serve the product, want it to serve the story of the book as best as it can. And my interpretation of what I read can sometimes be different than what the author might have intended, but I think that the spirit is always there. And so the more information I can get from whatever artist I would say that, or whatever artist, I mean an author or a musician or what have you, I see it's basically a collaboration where we're working together to create something. But in the end, especially with book covers, I consider obviously the book is the primary focus. I just hope that whatever I provide can help sell that book or help people to just simply pick it up and be intrigued by it, because it's just a single piece of art on the cover. The real meat of it all is obviously in the book itself. So.
Yeah.
So, but if it comes to how do I fill out the backgrounds, it is quite simply I enjoy inhabiting a world that even if it's fairly realistic, it's still in my imagination, and I like to inhabit that and to just simply almost take a snapshot of while I'm enjoying traveling through that world. So I always want to give those layers of depth and interest. And I like to look at the piece when it's done and feel like I've captured a little bit of the detail of what I see in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sharing some pictures online with everyone. And of course, your website is really, it's got a moodiness to it.
Yeah, that website's a while now, so it's probably time that I give a new aesthetic to the whole thing. But I really when I was creating that website, because I created it all myself, I wanted it to have the feeling of getting away from the cleanliness and the sterility of computers and the internet, and see if I can create the feeling of you're looking into sort of an inky blackness, and these things are illuminated that that have a lot of age and texture, and you could almost reach out and touch them. Everything. Yeah. So I tried to make everything on that website such that it feels like a tangible thing that's there in front of you, and and to be honest, I think I still really like the idea of websites and things like that where you don't feel like you're just surfing something that's two-dimensional, but something where you almost feel like you could reach inside of it. So, so that probably reflects so much about who I am as an artist as well. So.
Well, for instance, you got a picture here of Disturbed, and he's got strapped back so that way he doesn't come out of the computer. And it just feels like he's fairly on the edge of being able to reach out and grab you. But I like the edginess. You've got a old industrial look to it, and with the gears and your texture like you were talking about, yeah. And you've got some symbolisms here too. Some old versus new kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm definitely a lover of symbolism, and even when it's not asked for directly in any of the illustrations I do, I almost reflexively will add in layers of symbolism. And it also, when I'm given a project where I have a lot of freedom, I also that's like when you have that the blank page in front of you. And you can do anything. Then I fall back on the symbolism and what am I trying to express at its very kind of almost at its most abstract. What am I trying to say? Because then all the details can come later. But what am I trying to say? It's just as we were talking about the cover for the program with the
Rhino.
So it's basically a mechanical rhinoceros. It was really the symbolism behind it that drove everything that came after that. So yeah, absolutely. Like I said, a lover of symbolism.
So when did you get started working specifically for Wizards of the Coast? What piece did you start out with them?
Yeah, well, Wizards of the Coast was definitely one of the first companies that contacted me after I had a piece or two in the Spectrum Annual, and that would have to go back to at least. It would actually at this point it would probably be about 8 to 9 years ago now, and I was contacted by an art director named Matt Adelsberger, who works at Wizards of the Coast, and although I don't work with him anymore because I think he's moved to another department, I did work with him for many years, and they just brought me in to the Forgotten Realms novels that they were going for, and as is the nature with those novels, they are often in many of them are in a series, so that kind of created a momentum of as soon as I had done one piece that was pretty solid, then it was like, well, let's just keep going with the series, and eventually I was definitely ramped up to doing many covers each year. But when I first started doing pieces for them, I was actually working full time at a video game company called Oddworld Inhabitants, and I was one of the main character and background designers there at the time. I was doing some art direction on some of the 3D animation that we were doing for the games, and then I was able to simply, working on illustrations for fantasy was actually a very nice, even though it was a lot of work where I would have to go home from my full-time job and then spend, more time doing art. It was very freeing, and it was something I could just simply work on by myself, and that in a way was sort of therapeutic. And so, but gradually, I built up enough, or I was taking on enough projects that I was able to move on from the video game company and be and do just freelance. And basically, I've been doing just freelance ever since. So that was probably about 7 years ago. I started doing freelance full time, and I still, and to this day, I do a lot of work for Wizards of the Coast. Now I don't do as many novels. I do a lot of paintings for their Magic the Gathering card game, and I think that particular game is a great it's a great property to be part of or to take part in as an artist, because they really do give us quite a bit of freedom to explore our own style. And as you were mentioning with the werewolves before, things like that is just an opportunity to give my own take and put my own style into something that is, a very recognizable, I guess, mythological, either creature or archetype of some kind. And so, so my work has evolved from what I was doing with them at first to what I'm doing now. But yep, I still do quite a bit of work with Wizards of the Coast. And really, I mean, I also was I was playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was when I was a young kid, and so when they contacted me, likewise, as I was mentioning with Aliens and Predator, it was an interesting sort of nostalgic moment, and I couldn't pass it up. So in a way, they contacted me, and then the rest is history.
There you go. Well, it is good to be able to get a regular gig,
Well, certainly. I mean, that's definitely, I think, like partially the biggest challenge, but also to some degree the biggest misconception that a lot of people might have about freelance artists is that you don't know exactly like how many projects are you going to have in the course of a single year, and the truth is that you don't. But my experience is that it becomes surprisingly stable in the sense that if you nurture your relationships with art directors, with your clients, and you obviously work hard to keep to be consistent with the quality of the work, then people will always find you. And you'll have older clients, and you'll have and as long as you keep putting your stuff out there, there will be new clients that come along all the time. Just like you showing up and looking at talking to John and looking at the Wizards website and simply, oh, hey, look at that. And again, now we're part of that history again. It's like you started, you found it, and organically, here we are.
Yeah, because I said, hey, I like this piece, and tell me more about this artist that you have here. And so he did, and it helps. But that's how it should work with the industry, helping each other to be able to get your work out to people who will love that love your style. And
I find it hard to imagine what it must have been like really before there was an internet, because there are so many more there's so many more opportunities to get exposure as an artist for your artwork and put it out there. And it's true that there's a flood of imagery that your art could be lost in or drowned in. But at the same time, it's also that's the challenge of the artist, is to create something that rises above the white noise and can come out. But you just have no idea who's going to come across your artwork once it's out there. And that's both that's both exciting, and it's true that it's unpredictable. It's so you just can't say who's going to just come across it randomly. And I've had a lot of very pleasant surprises about the people that have contacted me to do work almost on a whim, just from something they had crossed paths with. So how it worked before when there was no internet, I'm not even sure. But I've heard anecdotes of how it must have gone, and that just seems like a different world.
Well, they had to obviously, do a lot more regionalization. They can't.
Exactly.
You couldn't really go to all these different states and put your work out there. You had to actually, you had to pound the pavement and go to the different. I think they had a lot more art galleries than locally, and it's a different world. Yeah.
Yeah,
And like everything else, the internet has changed our world that we're doing business in.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I create newspapers for, just part of what I do. I can do this job pretty much anywhere in the world.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I do that. When I travel, I take my work with me, and I've lived in a number of places, and I move around a lot because new environments inspire me, and I don't think I'm done moving. I still intend to live in some other places around the world, and doing my job anywhere in the world is only becoming easier with the more connected that we all become. So as much as I sometimes can feel a little overwhelmed by the internet and how ever present it is, I also owe a huge debt to that technology in what it's allowed my lifestyle to be. And so yeah, like I said, it'd be hard to imagine doing this, being a freelance illustrator in a different era. So, but I appreciate where I am now.
I wouldn't have seen your work, as honestly, I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons person. So, my best friends were. I had geek friends, and they liked the Dungeons and Dragons, and I was more of a on hands kind of person. So, I like actually shooting and you. I like doing that. Not behind the scenes kind of thing. So, but they all did. So definitely part of that world, yet not. Kind of funny that way.
Well, that's the thing. You don't even have to be part of that world in order to see the trappings of that world. So you can just travel through it and have a look at it without actually taking part in it in a big way. So yeah, it's a lot of opportunities.
And since you worked on video games, let's bring that up for a little bit here, and we can kind of kick off. It's been an hour, but I can talk to you about video games here if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay. It is something that it's not just video games, but role-playing games. I think role-playing games are actually on the uprise. Do you find that to be true?
Are you talking about things like World of Warcraft? What's the online role-playing games? Is that?
Well, World of Warcraft, but more or less the role-playing games that where people are creating worlds.
Oh, yeah.
And creating characters, and then of course you're playing like at conventions or even at the game store down the street.
Oh, of course.
And
I definitely think that. Yeah.
Everything else is on the rise.
Yeah, I definitely think that is on the rise, and I think that it will become probably more integrated into our cultural presence as time goes on. Much like we were just talking about how you don't play Dungeons and Dragons, but you have friends that do. The online role playing games, they definitely, or the ones they might play as cards or something. They allow people to they can either dip their toe in the water and just do it a little bit and get a little bit of that experience, or it allows people to basically let it take over their entire lives. So there's a whole range of your opportunity to take part in that you really couldn't do when you were just doing it with books and paper. Oh, you could do that. It could be a little bit as far as taking over your life, but now it's just so readily available. Whether it's on your if you're taking a subway ride, you can be on your phone playing it, or if it's people can do it during their lunch break at work. It's something it's so ubiquitous that there's no doubt that it's on the rise. But I also think that it's beyond just the idea of having fun playing something. It's also meaning it's not just the joy of playing like a game, like a board game. It's people are living out a sort of a fantasy of being somebody else, and if you live in the hustle and bustle our society, and they're not just, off in a very quiet place in the mountains or something, then, our rat race can be quite oppressive at times, and people need an escape. And I think that role-playing games is how they escape. And I think that more and more people are doing it, and there's less of a stigma to it, and as far as being too nerdy or something like that. And more and more people are taking part in it and seeing that it can be, I think, at times kind of therapeutic. But although personally I don't play those games or anything like that. I actually don't play hardly any video games anymore. I think working on them for so long, I was, I think, behind the curtain and seeing all the strings being pulled a little too much, and now I don't crave that experience anymore. But I can see how it would be on the rise. So.
I have people ask me all the time, so what are you reading now? And I said, honestly, I don't read for the fun of it anymore. Not enough because I'm creating the books or I'm writing the stories, and so I'm having to. It's work now.
Well, there's no doubt that I certainly don't read very many fantasy or science fiction novels for fun anymore, because I get enough opportunities to read them throughout the year as part of work, and I enjoy reading them for work. But it's true, I don't tend to spend as much time reading that in my spare time. So honestly, what I spend most of my time reading is nonfiction. So I tend to be interested in subjects that are pretty far away from the work that I do, and because that gives me just a sort of mental, not only a mental break from my work, but also just, it's kind of like flexing a muscle, where if you are just doing the same exercise over and over again, your whole body's not getting the proper workout. So same with the brain. I can work it out with my imagination for the science fiction and fantasy worlds, but I also like to spend a lot of time pondering the real world as well, and the way things really work. And I love history. I want to know, I want to ground my imagination in stuff that's real. So from histories all the way up to modern explorations in psychology and such, all that kind of stuff interests me as an addition to the work that I do.
Well, it's kind of funny. As I was getting to know your work a little bit and going back and forth talking to you a little bit, and I was thinking, I was wondering how you were going to interview.
And how does it compare?
You totally blew me out of the water there. And I was thinking, I was thinking, man, I wonder if you can be so quiet that I have to, really just reach out and grab him by the tongue in order to get him to say anything. But you have been, very expressive. You know your subject very well. You do not have any problem, telling us very fine detail what you think. And I think that you're going to be an absolutely awesome guest.
Well, thank you very much. I honestly don't really crave being, I'd say, I guess, in the spotlight that much. But it's true that I don't have any problem getting into a discussion. I mean, I enjoy it, but I wouldn't say that I probably don't seek it out just for the simple joy of it. But that probably means that I've got a lot of pent-up ideas that I need to express. So when I get an opportunity, it all just comes flowing out. So. Wow.
Well, see, when I talked to John, I said, well, how do you think he would do in front of others? Because it's not just that you did beautiful work, but how are you going to be seen as, by our members?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? How can you communicate with them? And he said, well, I haven't met him in person. And I thought, okay, uh-oh. He said he's very professional. Oh, my God. Which is a great thing for our director to say, but as somebody who's looking for something a little more spontaneous and fun to be around, because that's really what these people are looking for, is entertainment.
That's true, and I totally realize that, and I wouldn't take on accept a position as the guest of honor if I didn't feel I was up to it and was hopefully giving people their money's worth out of it, as in the people buying the tickets to come into the convention. So, but yeah, I think it'll be a good time.
I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised, just like I am. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Don't worry,
no,
I can talk about a lot of things other than just art too. So, yeah.
Well, yes. Why I asked you about gaming, because we will be getting. You are in a couple panels with John about the gaming world and how to build the world. And so it'd be good. So you're going to be in a couple panels with them. That'd be kind of fun for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did spend 8 years working full-time at a video game company, so I do know fairly well the ins and outs of it. Although that was a number of years ago, I've been into gaming companies recently, doing some work for them, and the truth is things haven't changed very much. But the process of building a world, that's what video games are all about. So I think it all does tie together. So I think that there'll be a lot to say about that, and I hope that the audience will also want to be involved in that conversation as well, and that they'll have plenty of good comments and questions to throw in.
Yeah, I hope so.
If not, I'm sure we can just figure out a way to just have a conversation right in front of them and just let us go, and then we'll be fine.
I have seen it both ways. It's so I've been going to conventions for over 20 years. And it's been an interesting process, and it's been something I'm not sure I want to do a whole lot again. I enjoy working with artists and authors. Yeah, I like getting to meet you guys, and that's really what it's all about.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you as well, so it'll be a good time.
Dale, we're at the tail end of our conversation, and I know you're going to be in Arizona. You're going to be in Arizona next week. Now, I do know you're staying a little longer. Did you have something else that you're planning on going out and seeing the sites while you're here?
Well, actually, I actually have an old friend who lives in the Phoenix area, and I haven't gotten the chance to spend time with him in a while. So I think that I'll just be spending time with friends, and I've been to the Phoenix area a number of times. So I think that it was a good opportunity I guess you could say that doing a convention is work, although I consider it to be kind of a little bit of play as well. But to also get in some personal friend time while I'm there and enjoy the desert as best I can. I don't know how hot it is right there right now, but I'm assuming it's creeping up pretty good.
Yeah, we've already reached double digits or triple digits, so we already reached 101 last weekend.
Oh wow! Well, I'll enjoy it.
That night is really nice, Joe.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's about 98, and so that's about the average right now. The weekend, at night though, I mean, you can still open the doors and windows, and it's still cool enough breeze without having to have the air AC on. So, but by the middle of the afternoon, 3 or 4, I'm and working in here, going like, okay, might be time to actually turn on the AC a little bit, because I've been trying not to. It's so much
I think I'll enjoy it. I've spent most of my life living in pretty hot places, so I think that it won't be anything too out of the ordinary for me. But it'll be good. But I always enjoy traveling, and it's always fun to be in a new place.
You live in California, so what part of California do you live in?
Currently, I'm living in Southern California. I'm living in Los Angeles. So, and even more specifically, I guess I'm actually living in Hollywood, which is kind of strange. That's something I've only lived here for about 7 or 8 months, but I'm originally from Southern California, so it's not an unfamiliar place to me.
Mm-hmm.
but the area that I'm living in is a new place for me. So it's still exciting and new in its way.
Mm, okay. Yeah, I knew you lived around the LA area. I was just thinking you were at Sacramento area, but yeah, that's close enough.
Mm-hmm. I did just actually move down here from living in the Bay Area, so I've experienced weather on both ends of the spectrum. So
yeah.
I think I prefer
Bay Area is real weird. It can get pretty downright chilly there.
That's right.
Yeah. So I always ask a question. Well, especially if the character or the person I'm interviewing would play well with it. So I'm going to ask you my question, and you answer however you see fit to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
The question is: now that you have successfully slain the dragon, how will you celebrate?
Oh. No, it's successfully slaying the dragon. How will I celebrate? I think that I will have a great feast. I think that's exactly what I will do. Having slain the dragon, no doubt about it. I will have the greatest party ever. That's what we're gonna do. That's it. Simple as that.
There you go. Yeah, and it's a great question because honestly, everybody answers it differently. And it says a lot about their personality, depending on what they say.
Well, that makes me sound quite selfish and self-indulgent, but I think that's what I would do.
Look at it this way: say you just killed the dragon, you might as well eat him.
Oh yeah. Hopefully, dragon tastes good.
You're kind of pragmatic,
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't want it to go to waste or anything. So hey, let's stop burning the village and now feed the village. It's all good.
There you go. So it definitely plays in well with who you are. Because I had somebody ask me that during a writing interview, and I thought, well, what a weird, quirky, but kind of cool question. And so I've been using it ever since.
That's funny. That's a good question. I like it. How did you answer it then?
Well, kind of funny because I said that I would burn the carcass on a huge bonfire and drink heartily as I danced around the bonfire. So I partied.
You did party.
Hey, you just did a monumental thing. You might as well party.
I think so. Slaying the dragon is a lot of effort, so I say that you're totally justified in rewarding yourself. I think you're fine.
So you say you're feeling slightly guilty because you think it's selfish. No, it's who you are.
I'm just looking at it from all sides. But I might say that, but I have not retracted my answer. My answer still stands.
You don't. I don't let you do that.
Exactly.
But you first come out of your mouth because it shows you who you are. So I think everybody's going to enjoy the weekend next weekend. And
excellent.
And I look forward to seeing you there. You're coming in on Thursday, so you'll be able to enjoy the film festival. I know we've got some media people coming, some different companies to do some video and audio. So you'll be ready with your A game.
I certainly will be.
Okay, I'm going to see you on Thursday, and you have a great night. Okay.
Oh,
thanks
great.
so
Thank
much.
you for having me on.
No, thank you.
All right, I will see you Thursday, and thanks again. All right, bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye. That was Raymond Swanland, and of course was a quite surprising and a pleasure to talk to. This is Patty Holstrand. This is KWOD Radio. And what do we have coming up, you ask? Well, we're going to take it a little slower probably the rest of this weekend. I've got some things going on. We're, of course, getting ready for LepreCon, which, of course, is freaking me out. So we're getting all that done. But this weekend, of course, on the 4th, You have to remember that the 4th is Free Comic Book Day, which is a big day for geeks all over the world. Free Comic Book Day. And I will be probably going out to a couple of the comic book stores during the day and into the evening to celebrate and, of course, cover some of what they're going to be doing. We are talking to, on Monday, KWOD Radio. We have our space show with Don, and we'll be talking more again about homesteading space and what we should be doing. We should be going to the moon, or should we be going straight to Mars? So that's a big hubbub that's out. Also, if you are interested in getting any information on the convention, definitely let me know. I am on Facebook at pj.hultstrand, HULTSTRAND. I will also be having a pre-con show here on KWOD Radio for what we call Warriors of the Rainbow pre-con show for LepreCon on Tuesday at 5:30. So the space show on Monday, the 6th, will be starting at 6 p.m. And the Escape the Grind Warriors of Rainbow pre-con show with a couple of guests from the convention coming on and talking to us. And that'll be on Tuesday, the 7th, May 7th, from 5:30. And then I'm probably not going to have anything on again until on Monday, the 12th, which will be still at the convention. We're going to do a live show directly from one of our panels, something we've never done before. I'll be doing a live show directly from the panel on how to build the audience. So wish me luck on that. Hopefully everything works out with the Wi-Fi. That's always a hit and miss when it comes to hotels. So hope that works. If it doesn't, then I'll just pre-do the show and then I'll put it up later. The Escape the Grind post-con show on the 14th, talking to some of the guests and they didn't like, and some outrages in Seattle, and what they would do if they were in charge, kind of thing. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. And this is KWOD Radio. This is Patty Hultstrand signing off. I'm going to go get a drink, and I'm going to get back for a little bit before I start getting into something new. So you guys have a great night, and we'll see you soon.